Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This time we're going back to cover a show that is more evidence that sequels are never as good as the original. It's Starrcade 1992, Lethal Lottery Battlebowl Part 2. Cush, what could WCW have been thinking going back to the Battlebowl again after the first year?
The true mystery of it is that I knew that they had done two Battle Bowls, but it never occurred to me that there's a change in management in between Battle Bowl 1 and Battle Bowl 2. So it's not just that Dusty was like, hey man, let's just go back to the well again.
Dusty is still booking.
But it's not just Dusty there anymore. So not only does Dusty decide oh, let's give it another try, but somebody else has to be like, you know what? That last one was so great. I want this to be my legacy too.
Yeah. So as you referenced, there's been a change in management. After what feels like forever, Jim Herd is finally gone from WCW at the beginning of 1992. He loses a power struggle with Dusty Rhodes, which feels like the only time Dusty Rhodes won a power struggle in his entire career.
That just shows you how incompetent Jim Herd was, that even Dusty Rhodes could beat him in a power struggle.
It's like losing to the New York Jets.
Yep.
Herd went to Turner Management and was like, I've had enough of Dusty. Either he goes or I go. And they were like, okay, you're gone, Jim. Which, I don't even think it was that they loved Dusty. I think, they were just done with Herd at that point.
I just love the idea of Herd, giving them an ultimatum, and they're like, yeah, we'd really like you to go, actually. You suck.
I've, heard him talk about it, and, he's kind of bemused by it. He's like, yeah, I really didn't think I was getting fired in that meeting, but that's what happened. So they initially replaced him with a guy named Kip Allen Fry, who was a lawyer from Turner who didn't have any wrestling experience. His run is kind of mixed. The boys really liked him, basically, because, in their view, basically he was a sucker and he paid really well. He instituted, a match of the night bonus where he'd, pay a bonus to whichever wrestlers he thought worked the hardest, which I think is a great idea, actually.
Oh, hell yeah, it's a great idea. That's how you get great matches out of people, even on small shows.
And not necessarily who had the best match, but, who exceeded, who did the most with the least. If two guys go in there and they just tear it down for 5 minutes, give them the bonus instead of, your 20-minute Steamboat Flair match. Of course that match is going to be good.
Yeah, but if Flair just wrestles his normal Flair match and Van Hammer wrestles out of his mind and has a 4-star match, give it to Van Hammer.
So what I heard got him fired was he signed Brian Pillman and Paul Heyman to contracts that were considered way too generous, quarter million per year guaranteed, which does sound a little high for the state of things in WCW in 1992 for a mid-carder and a manager.
Yeah, this is a guy who just wanted to be popular among the wrestlers and was enjoying that and got taken for a ride by some manipulative young men.
So I have this theory that in professional sports, when an organization fires its coach and they go looking for his replacement, they always look for his opposite.
Yep.
Players' coaches are always replaced by disciplinarians, offensive coaches by defensive coaches. This is precisely what WCW does here. They're saying, okay, the last guy didn't know wrestling. He was too nice to the boys. Let's go get Bill Watts.
And, Bill Watts was attractive to them for a number of reasons. He's run a national promotion before, which there are only 3 men left alive who have done that. He's just corporate enough that you can kind of sell him to the people upstairs, and Turner would respect him. He's kind of an entrepreneur.
You can believe that even if they thought he was kind of crazy, the suits at TBS would be like, yeah, this is a wrestling guy. This guy gets it. This Texas cowboy.
But it's that special combination. He knows what he's talking about, but is corporate aware enough that he can explain it to people who don't know wrestling. He can sell those things to those people. And he knows what he's talking about. For all of Bill Watts' myriad issues, being a gigantic racist is at the top of that particular list, the man knows how to book. He's proved that for 20 fucking years before he ever walks into WCW's door.
So this feels like a slam dunk hire. if you're going to pick the right guy at the right time, this feels like it. And yet it turns out to be a complete disaster.
Just a joke. Like, you can't even overstate how much of a disaster this is. This winds up with him making racist comments that Hank Aaron himself goes to Ted Turner and gets him fired.
Oh, how much did you pop at the beginning of the show when it's him and Hank Aaron together?
It's him and Hank Aaron in the ring!
And like a week after this, things are going to go real south.
Holy shit.
We'll get into that next week. So he's brought in with a mandate to cut costs, both production and talent salaries. So from the beginning, he's not going to be popular. He introduces a lot of changes that really take the company back in time. In front of the camera, does things like they take the mats off the floor. He bans top rope moves. They introduce the top rope disqualification rule. They like really reduce the production values of the shows, make it way less bright in the arenas. This is all trying to recreate like Mid-South wrestling circa 1982.
And I've listened to shoot interviews with him where he kind of explains what his thinking was on all of these things. And like, you could kind of like squint and understand where he was trying to get to, like the no tap moves off the top rope thing. It was kind of basically the idea of like when Kevin Nash and they banned the power bomb, right? Like, yeah. Well, it'll get super over when somebody just starts doing flips and shit, right?
Sure.
Okay, I kind of get that. Take the pads off the outside. Okay, they'll seem like badasses when they get dropped on the outside.
Stupid.
It's stupid, and nobody gives a shit. But all right, whatever. Like, you're trying to make them look like tough guys, fine. It's just that when you add it up, what it adds up to is a desperately boring product.
Well, and this is what you run into. I mean, he hadn't been working in wrestling for 5 years at this point, and that is a long time in the entertainment industry or in sports. The idea of hiring a coach who hasn't coached in 5 years doesn't seem like a great idea. See John Gruden with the Las Vegas Raiders.
I mean, yeah, and these 5 years especially. We're in 1992. Think of where we are in 1992. Like, we're towards the end of, like, WWF's run on top. And the last time he booked a show was 1987. Where were we then? Hogan Andre. The world has changed.
It really has. There's been a real sea change in wrestling in that time span. And more rules for behind the scenes. No playing cards in the dressing room. Wrestlers have to stay until the show ends. They can't just leave after their match. Heels and baby faces not allowed to fraternize on the road or travel together. If you cheat without it being approved during your match, you get fined because you're burying the referee if you cheat incorrectly.
A lot of this stuff is just, some of it maybe sounded good to him on paper, but like, why are you unnecessarily pissing off your workforce for no benefit? I'll never understand that.
And it's just to me, pro wrestling is a creative industry. Like, these guys are artists. I think you gotta give them room to be creative, and like this like top-down authoritarian way of running things is not a good fit. Like, say what you want about Vince McMahon. Like, Vince McMahon's willing to put up with a lot of shit from guys.
I mean, like, Vince McMahon has always been said to be super easygoing about a lot of things that maybe he even shouldn't be easygoing about. It's just, it's always bothered me, this idea that he wanted to like go back to the past and be this super hard-ass disciplinarian while he's cutting all their salaries.
Yeah.
Like, you can do one or the other. Like, you can cut salaries and be like, all right, guys, we're just going to right this ship. We're going to get creative, going in the right direction. We're all going to make a ton of money once we show to the head office that we can do it.
That's what happens under Bischoff.
Yeah, that's like, all you have to do is just be like, all right, we got to do this, but, you know, it's going to get fucking better, and then you're all going to get paid.
Bischoff cuts salaries, but he also, like, radically improves their quality of life by being like, we're going to stop touring and just do all the shows from Disney. Like,
and then when the money comes in, Bischoff spreads it around, and that's how you get a happy workforce.
Amazing that Eric Bischoff has been buried in wrestling for the sin of paying people too well.
It's amazing That like if you read like the death of WCW
What a
and books like
wretched
that,
culture we have when it comes to wrestling, where we don't want the wrestlers to make money.
that's literally their number one criticism. It's just like he thought he could pay the wrestlers. Ha ha ha! What an idiot.
Yeah, like, my God, can we rage against the machine just a little bit as wrestling fans?
It's just embarrassing.
And
Like,
yet so many fans say, what if we raged for the machine?
what if we raged along with the machine? It's a real bummer. The fans are just as much a reason why we don't have a union as anything else, and I think that's something we need to own.
Another thing Watts does is he works out a renewed partnership with the NWA, which had split with WCW when they fired Ric Flair in 1991. Flair left with the NWA title. The NWA didn't strip him of the belt right away. They were hoping he would go defend it in whatever territories were left at the time. I'm always amused by the thought that Ric Flair was going to go wrestle in ECW.
That would have been pretty staggering. I'm sure Shane Douglas would have loved that shit.
So the NWA title was vacant for over a year. They finally crown a new champion in like October '92 when Chono wins a tournament in Japan that features a number of WCW guys.
Yeah,
They
specifically, this is a G1 climax.
Yeah, that's right. It's the G1 climax that year.
Yeah.
I think he beat Rick Rude in the finals, if I'm remembering right. I hope it was a better match than they had at Halloween Havoc.
It's such a better match, it almost doesn't seem like it could possibly be the same two people.
They also did a tournament to crown NWA Tag Team Champions, which was won by Terry Gordy and Steve Williams, which is about as Bill Watts a tag team as you can draw up.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, that's going to create a pretty big issue.
Yes.
Here's the thing. Are you guys aware that All Japan and New Japan aren't both just the same promotion because all Japanese dudes are the same?
If so, congratulations. You know more than Bill Watts did.
Because he just decides to treat them like the same shit, even though he has no relationship with All Japan and is beholden to New Japan.
Yeah. So this is another explanation as to why, like we always ask, like, why so many of these great American stars who were so big in Japan, like, didn't stay with WCW for long. I think this is the explanation for, like, Williams, Gordy, and Stan Hansen, at least, is they were loyal to All Japan and weren't willing to work for New Japan, which was part of working in WCW at this point, is you're going to do New Japan shows too.
Yeah, that's the thing. The wrestling war that was going on in All Japan and New Japan at the time was sort of a Cold War. Like, it wasn't like outright, like, it wasn't like the shit talking Monday Night Wars. It was more just like, when you're our talent, you're fucking our talent, and you don't go work for the other guy no matter what. You stay here, you develop your own talent. Nobody jumped ship until like 2000. Like, in the 90s, it just wasn't an option. Like, they wouldn't even take you in New Japan if you worked for All Japan because that's just not what was done. So, yes, there's very much a split in that way. And yeah, they have no relationship with All Japan whatsoever. Non-existent. Like, they would not touch WCW because they worked with New Japan. So it's an insult on all sides.
They spend the summer, like, building the company around Williams and Gordy. Like, the entire, like, Beach Blast and Great American Bash shows that year are getting Williams and Gordy over as the biggest badass tag team in the world. And then Gordy bails, and Williams is still around here, but I think he leaves right after this.
It's just so funny to me. It is interesting to me. Watts is clearly enamored of the Japanese wrestlers, which partially it's because New Japan's a bigger promotion than WCW is at this point.
Yeah, do you think he just, like, saw how successful pro wrestling was in Japan at this time and was like, oh, well, if it works there, it'll work here?
I also think he probably fell in love with, like, the style a little bit. Yeah. Like, that's some badass, hard-ass wrestling going on over there.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Like, they're making money. This show, like, we'll get to this, but this show draws 8,000 people. The very next week, New Japan draws 53,000 people.
Yeah. Yeah, New Japan does, like, a $3.2 million gate at the Tokyo Dome a week after this. WCW wasn't grossing $3 million in a month at this point.
Yeah. So it's pretty clear that, like, even if the American fans don't necessarily know all of the Japanese guys, he's trying to get something off of that winning formula, right? And they do know Muta, and other than Sting, Muta's probably the biggest star they have access to at this point.
Yeah. For comparison, I think WCW's average house show attendance at this point was barely 1,000 people, if that.
That's wretched.
Well, it was just, again, an insight of Eric Bischoff's. Why are we touring if we're losing money every time we run a show?
Yeah, no one wants to see our show. Why are we doing this?
Yeah, like, we're just losing money on the arena rentals.
Let's just stay in one spot. Again, we've said it before on episodes before. Eric Bischoff's like that football coach who comes in and he takes over a really shitty program and he turns it around. He's not the guy to run it once it's successful, but he's the guy who gets it going in the right direction.
So, back in February, Sting won the WCW title from Lex Luger. That would be Luger's final match in the promotion. He leaves for a cushy gig with the World Bodybuilding Federation after that. Another story there. WCW at this time, Kip Fry was very anti-steroids. They hadn't really implemented much of a drug testing program at this point, but they were trying to crack it. I think Fry again, in his vision of paying people for everything, I think he started paying guys more if they were clean. If they passed their drug tests, they would get paid extra.
See, here's the fabulous thing. That's probably the only drug policy that would ever actually work.
Yeah. Kevin Nash got him off steroids. He was wrestling as Vinny Vegas, so his body was all covered anyway. What did it matter if he was in shape or not?
But how brilliant is that? It's just like, hey, you want an extra 1,000? Just get off the roids. Okay.
And I don't have to buy steroids anymore? That's a double bonus.
And you're not going to punish me for not having a great body? Fuck yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So anyway, Vince has been advertising the WBF is going to be clean bodybuilding. Luger shows up to this last title defense, and he is just gassed to the gills. Must have been 290 pounds of pure muscle.
Out of control. He knows that that's his job now. It's just to be Dr. Steroids.
So Sting holds the belt for a couple months. He loses it to Vader at the Great American Bash in July. They didn't put Vader over as strongly as I would have liked there. Vader wins because Sting hits his head on the post when he does the Stinger Splash. I think that should have been a dominant Vader victory. But given what the actual plan is, it makes more sense. You'd think that this is priming Vader for a huge run as champion. I think you're going to keep this belt on him for a year.
That is not what takes place.
No, he drops the belt about 3 weeks later to Ron Simmons, of all people. That's on an episode of WCW Main Event, which was taped August 2nd and aired on August 16th. The storyline they did was Vader was supposed to defend the belt against Sting, but Sting was injured and couldn't do the match in kayfabe. So they did a random drawing, and they drew Simmons, so he gets the shot against Vader, and he beats him in a shocker. I mean, what a moment to have a black world champion. That's a stunner. We've still to this day only had a few of them.
Yeah.
It's had, The Rock, Mark Henry, Kofi Kingston?
I believe so.
Depends what you consider a world title, I guess.
Say Lashley if it matters.
Yeah, Lashley if you count TNA.
It's not a big list, dude.
No.
The funny thing about it too is that if this had been 6 months into Vader's run and Simmons gets a little more time and it's just a completely dominant run and there's no chance, this little jabroni Ron Simmons comes in, whatever, I'll give him a shot. And then
if it happened right here at Starrcade in Atlanta,
then it's the fucking biggest deal ever. He gets crowned and ordained. He's the man.
You might be able to get Ted Turner to show up and shake his hand.
Well, why don't you just do this? The Battlebowl winner gets to face Vader tonight.
Yeah. And so then Simmons has been through all this, and Vader comes in fresh and is going to beat his ass, and Simmons somehow gets the win.
And then Hank Aaron is there to shake his hand.
Yeah.
That's the move. Fuck me. Like, that's...
Bill Watts wanted his new junkyard dog, and he wanted it right fucking now.
Yeah, he did. He doesn't want to not... He can't... Bill Watts has a fixation with Black World Champions that goes so far beyond.
I mean, the Junkyard Dog was so successful, but like, you can't just take any black wrestler and be like, this is going to be my new JYD. It's like taking a jacked up white dude and saying this is going to be my new Hulk Hogan.
Famously, when he goes to Vince in WWE, like he gives him like 3 tips. It's like, one's like, hey, it's got to be more realistic. Hey, you got to push the shit out of Bret Hart. And also, the future of this company is Ahmed Johnson.
Yeah, except I think he wanted to call him like Buck Allen or some shit like that. Bill Watts is a paradox.
Yeah, he is.
Undeniably racist, but pushed more black wrestlers than just about anybody else.
Yeah, he exploited them. That's the difference, is he openly exploited black people for his own gain, and he loved doing that.
Simmons, great talent, and like I just feel like had kind of a cursed career because I think the way this title run went buried him.
Oh yeah.
And by the time, and then he goes to the WWF and he's ready to be a top guy, and they saddle him with the Gladiator gimmick. And then with the Nation.
And then by the time he's ready for part 2, since he got into wrestling so late, he was already too old. Like, he had a window and he missed it.
Yeah. Not ready to be champion at this point. And they have no challengers ready for him. He works with the fucking Barbarian at Halloween Havoc.
Yeah, Vader is the guy. Like, that's the thing, is like, you do this with Simmons, and then he's supposed to feud with Vader for another couple more months if you, like, actually want to make him the man.
How many babyface champions in a row in this company have we said they have nobody to work with? Why can't this company get a heel over?
This is the fascinating thing, is that the NWA was a heel territory for the entirety of the time it was the NWA. Flair leaves, and they try to make themselves into a babyface territory. But you can't do that unless you start manufacturing heels. You can't just keep producing nothing but babyfaces and then be like, well, we got a lot of babyfaces walking around here.
Well, they have the Dangerous Alliance, but they don't do anything with them.
They're not... Yeah, they don't push them, any of them. Even Rude isn't really doing shit half the time.
Yeah, the Dangerous Alliance is already dead. I mean, I think it's dead by this point because they fired Heyman. Because they... Yeah. I don't even remember. They caught him in some kind of scheme where he was ripping off the company.
Fucking
something with airline tickets. I don't remember the details. It's not important.
God damn it, Paul. You know what it is. He's listening at the door with a cup, or maybe that was a different time.
God. I would love to somebody just make the definitive list of Paul Heyman fire-ins.
The fact that you can be such a genius that you can get fired for stealing and ripping off and manipulating your company dozens of times and just get another job 6 months later every single time. That's the Paul Heyman story.
Also notable this year, they bring in Jake Roberts for what turns out to be a very brief run. He has a match against Sting at Halloween Havoc that draws the company's best buy rate to date. That's the infamous coal miner's glove match. I have a note here that says Roberts was fired shortly thereafter for being Jake Roberts, which pretty much sums it up, I think.
Yeah, I think it does.
Watts didn't want to pay him all the money he was paying him, and Jake Roberts not the most reliable person on the face of the earth.
I mean, he did just randomly come down and pop the greatest buy rate in company history, though, so could have shown him a little more gratitude.
And we come to Starrcade, which is once again built around the Battlebowl and some other nonsensical things we'll get into. We got the finals of the King of Cable tournament, which will feature Vader against Sting. The King of Cable tournament was a celebration of the 20th anniversary of pro wrestling airing on TBS, which had begun in 1972 with Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Why wasn't it the King of TBS tournament then?
King of Cable sounds kind of cool.
It does, but it doesn't sound like it's connected to TBS. It just kind of sounds like, all right, King of Cable.
Yeah, I mean, my confusion when I watched the show the first time years ago was, why is the King of Cable tournament ending on pay-per-view?
That is a very good question. This kind of sounds like it should be a Clash of Champions kind of thing.
So to get into the show, it's Monday, December the 28th, 1992. Can't tell you why this show happened on a Monday. If anybody knows,
Monday.
If anybody knows, like, please hit us up on Twitter, because I can't explain this one. We're at the Omni in Atlanta, Georgia, returning to the site of several classic Starrcades, but we've really hit hard times here. The arena's only about half full, 8,000 people there. Couldn't find a gate number, but I'd have to imagine it's under $100,000.
I do want to say that even though the arena was half full, this presentation looked really good.
Yeah.
One of the things that Watts does to go old school is to kind of lower the lights over the crowd so that, like, you can focus more on the ring. I disagree with that when there's people in the audience, but it's actually not a bad tactic to disguise the fact that nobody's out there.
Yeah, when the upper deck's empty, it makes all the sense in the world to turn the lights down.
Yeah, so, like, the actual presentation makes this look like this looks better than it did the year before when they were probably spending twice as much on it.
The show does a miserable 0.5 buy rate for just 95,000 buys, down from 155,000 the previous year. Times are not good.
Yeah, welcome to TNA country, boys.
Under 100,000 buys for Starrcade.
For reference, isn't this right about where we are with AEW now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, like, it's not even on real pay-per-view now. It's fucking, like, whatever weird...
And people have been totally deprogrammed of the idea that they should pay $50 for a wrestling show.
As opposed to then, where that was literally the model, is like every month you just shell out your money and watch the show if you had any interest in the product whatsoever. So no, they did not.
What do you think of the post-Christmas pay-per-view slot? I actually really like this because I think it makes business sense because kids can get the pay-per-view as a gift.
I have always thought that they should offer discounted pay-per-views in between Christmas and New Year's. You still probably have a lot of family around. Like, you can give it as a gift for Christmas, but it's discounted because, you know, a lot of people don't necessarily have a lot of money around that time. Like, I've always really thought that you could get a shitload of buys that way. Like, even if it didn't necessarily add up to as much as, like, the $50 one, like, you can get a lot of people, like, jump-started back into your product, especially for WWE, because their busy time starts right after that. They're going to make the money right back.
Yeah. I miss Starrcade. Whether it's on Thanksgiving or right after Christmas, wish we had Starrcade back.
Yeah. As somebody who grew up as a nothing but WWE watcher, I don't have that December-shaped hole in my heart that Starrcade has left for you. Like, December pay-per-views in WWE have always just been absolute throwaways.
It's always been garbage. The absolute. Yeah. TLC is this Sunday, if anybody gives a fuck.
Oh my god. I had no idea. The last time I knew when a pay-per-view was happening before the day after it happened, I can't even remember.
TLC, historically WWE's worst pay-per-view of the year, I would say.
Absolutely. If you had to go back and find the last time a TLC even had a good match, is it The Shield versus Ryback and Team Hell No?
That was 8 years ago.
I know.
You're probably right.
Yeesh.
Yeah. Oh, man. On commentary, the team of Jim Ross and Jesse Ventura. Have we ever had the pleasure of hearing a show called by those two together?
I don't believe so. I
Maybe
know that...
way back in the day when we did that Halloween Havoc from this year, but Ventura has not been with the company for very long.
No, and you can tell that they have not had enough time to establish any sort of rapport between the two, because
they never do.
Yeah, Jesse talks directly over Jim Ross constantly.
They are so, it's amazing. These are like my favorite two commentators, and they are so bad together. Um, and I got to put the blame on JR because he just will not put Jesse over.
And that's the thing, is that like there's a formula for Jesse, right? Like you got to
Yeah.
like give Jesse space to do Jesse stuff. Like you got to be like blah 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 blah. And Jesse, what do you think? And just let him go for a while, and then you take it back to the thing. But like as we kind of talked about in the last one, JR's kind of outgrown just being a play-by-play guy. He's kind of in this. He's kind of becoming a character unto himself.
A little bit, yeah.
And that doesn't work with Jesse. There's just no room for that taciturn, like straightforward, I'm gonna call it and tell everybody how it's gonna be and how it is, along with like the bombastic Jesse Ventura. It just isn't gonna meld.
And Jesse he'll get serious for the big matches, but he's gonna have his fun on the undercard matches, and you just gotta give him the room to do that. Like that was what made it work. I mean, we loved his commentary on those early WrestleManias. The combination of how funny he would be when he was messing around during the undercard matches, and how good he'd be when he'd get serious for the main events.
And see, that made the good for the main events stand out all the more. Like this got Jesse locked in.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's a big deal. Like Jesse is on the edge of his seat for this match. It's a damn good match.
Or when he'd put over, baby faces like Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage, that he respected them, even though they were good guys.
I hate that son of a bitch, Randy Savage, but god damn it, he's the best wrestler in the world.
But yeah, their commentary here, not great. We'll get into a few of the more icy and awkward exchanges they have during the course of the night.
I almost wish it had been Tony Schiavone and Jesse, just because watching Jesse run roughshod over Tony may have been pretty funny.
I think they worked together when Tony was. They did. They called that SummerSlam together. SummerSlam '89, I want to say. Maybe it was '90.
Yeah, we must have covered that during our SummerSlam series, but that was the most,
which you've blocked out.
That was the most depressed I've ever been in my entire life.
Almost killed this podcast before we really got going.
Jesus Christ.
The opening package runs through the history of Starrcade. That was very cool. Loved going through the clips of the old shows, particularly since wasn't like they were readily available back then. You couldn't just go on YouTube and watch clips of the original Starrcade. Did make me sad to think about how far the show had fallen at this point.
Completely agree. But I really loved this. I thought the presentation was great. Like the logo packages and the graphics and everything are really great. Like everything's looking really good here. Like I don't know if they had access to like the Turner graphics department or something to put this stuff together, but just like it's just a much slicker presentation all the way around.
Yeah, I love the running through Flair for the Gold, $1 Million match, the Gathering, the Skywalkers.
And what's the tagline for this one, Steve?
I don't remember. Lethal Lottery 2?
Yeah, see, all of those other ones were like just something quick, something memorable. Flair for the Gold. This one is the ultimate challenge of skill, luck, and survival. Only one man can survive.
Rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it?
Sure does. I guess technically it's only one man can survive is the tagline here. Which, no.
Then we go to JR and Jesse at the announce desk. And then we go to Eric Bischoff in the equivalent of the event center that Mean Gene would hang out in. He's in the control room. I think they called it the control center. He announces that Rick Rude is injured and will not be able to face Ron Simmons tonight. He'll be replaced by Dr. Death Steve Williams. That's a very Bill Watts match.
Yeah, it sure is. And it was pretty hugely disappointing, too. Like, I love Dr. Death Steve Williams, but he is not a replacement in any way, shape, or form on any card ever for Rick Rude.
I am so disappointed we didn't get to see Rick Rude take an atomic drop from Ron Simmons.
Hell yeah.
Tony Schiavone is in the ring with Bill Watts and Hank Aaron. We'll get into that story next week.
Ooh, boy.
They present Sting with the Battlebowl ring for winning the previous year.
Now, I was really interested in the way that Bill Watts presented this, because he basically says, like, he doesn't come out and say, like, now that I've taken over, this is going to be my legacy. But he makes it clear that, like, he wants to establish Battle Bowl as a tradition. Like he likes the idea of Battlebowl. He wants to make it a thing. And not only that, but he's making good on the promise that Dusty Rhodes made and actually making the Super Bowl style rings for people. Yeah. He awards Sting with his, and the winner tonight will get theirs too. The way they present this, I almost could have seen Battlebowl being a tradition. Like,
is this workable? The thing is there any equivalent to this in pro wrestling where it's just like a standalone tournament that's so prestigious and there's nothing at the, you don't get anything, you don't get a title shot for winning it or anything like that.
I know. And that it doesn't make sense to have one, because why have something totally disconnected from everything else? It doesn't.
Yeah, it's just wrestling. Combat sports have belts. They don't tend to have playoffs. It's just different from, say, team sports or, a sport like tennis. You have big tournaments. You win a trophy at the end. Wrestling just doesn't work that way. It's ongoing, so there have to be title belts and things you defend and win.
Or just like a greater purpose other than this feels like an exhibition, which doesn't have a lot of meaning, considering that every other match on the card is going to have like deep storylines and meanings and belts and stuff to fight for. I will argue hugely that now that they've shrunk it down to just 8 teams, the idea of doing that and then just having the winner of Battlebowl face the champ at the end of Starrcade is an awesome idea.
Yeah, that would work. I'd be down for that.
Yeah, you take people, it could be anyone randomly on the entire roster, and you've got a shot to face the champ tonight on the biggest stage of them all.
I hate that they did the King of Cable tournament on this show, too.
It's so confusing, Steve. Sting and Vader are both
throwing that in the middle of this. Yeah.
They're both part of the lottery.
We'll get into this. How many times everybody on this show is working? Like, a number of people work 3 matches on this show.
I cannot, like, every time you'd see someone, you could not remember for the life of you why they are here for this particular thing. It's so stupid.
Now we go to Larry Zbyszko and Missy Hyatt to draw the pairings. It turns out they drew the first 2 teams on the last Clash of the Champions, so we know it's Van Hammer and Dangerous Danny Spivey against Johnny B. Bad and Cactus Jack. I do love Johnny B. Bad and Cactus Jack as a team. That's what makes the Battlebowl great.
That is a great team. I will also give Bill Watts credit for this, or Dusty, or whoever chose the teams. The teams are much more smartly chosen this time around.
It's just a lot easier when there's so many fewer of them.
Yes, they've very carefully chosen who's going to be with whom, and for what reason, and to what end. And that's very smart. The idea that on Clash of the Champions are like, we're going to reveal the first 2 gigantic teams. Guys, get excited. Van Hammer and Dan Spivey. Buy our pay-per-view.
Yeah, nice try.
Why didn't you just announce 2 of the teams that will be there are Steve Williams and Sting and Vader and Dustin Rhodes? And
that would have worked.
And then just give you like some time to be like, wow, what the hell is that going to be like?
If you can believe this, Johnny B. Bad and Cactus Jack don't work well together as a team.
You mentioned earlier that Luger was on a lot of steroids. Johnny B. Bad.
Yeah. Step on the gas.
Holy shit, guys. It looks like he ate the Incredible Hulk.
Bad and Cactus end up getting into it. Bad hits Cactus with a right hook, and Van Hammer rolls Cactus up for the pin. So Van Hammer and Spivey advance. Very sad to see Cactus Jack not advance to the Battlebowl.
Bill Watts thought that Cactus Jack was a big old pile of shit.
Everybody in WCW did, unfortunately.
Yes. It's amusing to me that Van Hammer and Dan Spivey go over here because...
God. What a horrible team.
Already by this point, Van Hammer's done. He's going to be in this company for another 8 years. Dan Spivey looks like someone's grandpa.
All right, next pairings. We've got Dustin Rhodes and Big Van Vader against Kenzuki Sasaki and the Barbarian.
This kicks ass.
Yeah.
What a team. What a 2 teams.
Barbarian kicks things off by slamming Vader. Vader hits some stiff punches on Barbarian, tags in Dustin. Dustin hits a back suplex. Barbarian's able to tag out to Sasaki. Vader tags in. He comes off the second rope with a body avalanche. Barbarian goes for a charge. He misses and runs into Sasaki, and Rhodes is able to roll him up for the pin. And then Vader just beats up Dustin after the match because he's done with him.
That was hilarious.
Yeah. Just instantly bell rings and he starts whooping his ass.
I loved Vader in this match for a couple reasons. One, there's some communication between him and the Barbarian right at the beginning where they're trying to get some spots going, but they just can't. And I don't know if somebody's no-selling for somebody else or what. But Vader just starts beating his ass. Well, I tried to do it the normal way. Here we go.
Reminds me of when Braun Strowman wouldn't sell for Brock Lesnar.
Yep, it's oh, we're not selling, are we? Yes, we are.
Easy way or hard way.
And then at the end of the match, Vader goes over and he shakes Dustin's hand. He's like, "Hey, buddy, good match. You got the win for us. Appreciate it."
Bam.
Clothesline.
I love Vader.
What a dick.
Then we've got Barry Windham and the Great Muta against Too Cold Scorpio and Brian Pillman. This is an awesome combination.
Barry Windham, three people in this match kick ass, and Barry Windham's very old. He's wearing a cool jacket because he's trying to look young and cool like Brian Pillman. It ain't working.
Windham and Pillman, former tag champions, and will be challenging Ricky Steamboat and Shane Douglas for the tag belts later tonight, but on opposite teams here. Muta popping in once a year as he does for WCW. He's gotten to be a pretty huge star in Japan at this point. I believe he's the IWGP Heavyweight Champion.
He is, yes. Literally the week later, he and Chono are going to have a unification match for the NWA title in the IWGP. So, yeah. Yes, he is. He's the guy. He is the guy in New Japan right now.
Muta and Pillman start off with a mat exchange. Windham tags in. Him and Pillman exchange chops. Scorpio and Muta tag in. Windham tags in. He hits a big suplex. Floats over into a pin. And then he hits a big right hand on Scorpio. Muta comes in. He works a toe hold. Scorpio breaks out a nice corkscrew leg drop. Muta comes back with a spinning back kick. Scorpio does a slingshot 450 from the ramp into the ring. That was pretty amazing.
In case anyone needed reminding, Too Cold Scorpio was one of the coolest men who ever walked the earth. The things he was doing, a full fucking decade before other people were.
Is there a hilarious story about why he didn't last in WCW?
Why, yes, there is, Steve.
Oh, God, now I'm remembering it.
I would just love to tell you that they were on a tour of Puerto Rico. Yes, that tour of Puerto Rico where Psycho Sid stabs Arn Anderson. And, well, this is one of the two reasons why. This is the one that poisoned him for Flair, okay? Is that he's jogging on the beach in a thong because that's just something that he liked to do.
Yeah.
And Ric Flair and his wife are relaxing on the beach, and Scorpio runs by, and according to Too Cold Scorpio, his dick pops out of his thong in front of Ric Flair's wife.
Scorpio's junk being legendarily huge.
So it literally, the way he described it on the shoot interview was, it pops out and goes boing. So when Ric Flair comes back to WCW, he's basically, fire that motherfucker Too Cold Scorpio right now. Couldn't handle the meat.
Windham comes in, he hits a big DDT on Scorpio, and Muta follows up with a moonsault for the pin. Good match.
Oh yeah, this is very enjoyable. Great Muta, as I said earlier, probably the second most over person on this show. The crowd loves them some Muta.
Next up, we've got Sting and Steve Williams against Jushin Liger and Eric Watts. Which one of these things does not belong?
When they announced these teams and
God.
put Sting on the opposite side of Jushin Liger, I lost my mind. Like, how awesome is that? But also, this is what we were talking about last time. You put Sting in there with Steve Williams to build to a future match between the two. That's just smart booking.
Unfortunately, Steve Williams will not be around much longer in WCW. I assume that's in connection with him not wanting to work the Tokyo Dome show for New Japan.
There you go.
Eric Watts is, of course, Bill Watts' son. He is a big athletic guy with some potential who I think had only been wrestling for about a year at this point. Should not have been on TV at all, much less pay-per-view, much less the biggest pay-per-view of the year.
And it's not like they push Eric Watts down people's throats. It's not like he's like winning here and winning the Battlebowl and shit. Like, nepotism has been worse in other places at other times. But it's just, he's so obviously not ready even to be on television that it's like, get this motherfucker out of here. Yeah. There are people sitting in the locker room when they're announcing these things. There's like at least 20 dudes back there who just aren't doing shit on this show and could have had that spot.
Steve Austin still works for this company.
Yep. Arn Anderson still works for this company. The Z-Man still works here.
Williams will not sell for Liger.
Nope.
Not doing that.
That is not a big man, small man thing. That is an All Japan, New Japan thing.
Yeah. Watts comes in with an arm drag, and Williams just shoves him to the ground. Williams also will not sell for Eric Watts.
Totally different reason. I'm not selling for the boss's kid. Fuck this.
Doc with a huge clothesline on Liger. Sting goes for a stinger splash, but Liger ducks it. Sting tags out to Williams. Williams hits a huge side suplex. Watts tags in. He manages to get Williams in the STF, but Williams gets to the ropes. Williams then hits a hot shot and gets the pin. Sting and Doc advance.
I mean, Doc looks great here. He looks like a badass.
Yep.
I don't know that I ever really bought Dr. Death as a main eventer in America. He just doesn't really have that look for me. But, you know, nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, I mean, and again, a lot of that is probably just he was never around long enough to get established.
Yeah. But also, like, he's a little shorter than you think he's going to be. Like, he's a badass, but not in that American wrestling kind of way.
That's the problem. Everybody is so tall. Like, Sting Sting doesn't seem like a big guy, but Sting is probably 6'2" or 6'3".
Yeah.
Like, Sting would look like a giant today. I mean, he does today when he's in the ring in AEW with, you know, Cody and Darby Allin and those guys.
Yeah, Japanese wrestling, Dr. Death's towers over motherfuckers. Yeah. But, like, it's not like that here.
Next up, for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, we've got Masa Chono versus the Great Muta. Two Japanese wrestling legends facing off in the U.S. Both kind of getting to the peak of their powers. You know, Chono, NWA champion, Muta, the IWGP champion. Like you said, they'll face off again in the Tokyo Dome the week after this in a unification match.
Yeah, they're both still kind of in the shadow of Hashimoto. Like, they all kind of came up together. They were the Three Musketeers. They were, like, the best three prospects ever to come out of the dojo at the same time. And, like, that's, like, the big thing. And, like, it's finally Chono and Muta have caught up with Hashimoto. If I may nitpick here for a second, they constantly refer to Kaiji Muto as the Great Muta and vice versa on this show. The clips they show of their previous match, which was between Kaiji Muto and Masahiro Chono, and not between the Great Muta and Masahiro Chono, I don't think they understand that those are supposed to be two different people.
Yeah, what's the American wrestling equivalent?
Is there one?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Bray Wyatt and The Fiend?
Yeah, The Fiend and Bray... Yeah. Farting noise.
Yeah, let's not go there.
Jesus Christ.
In kayfabe and Japanese wrestling, Muta and Kaiji Muto are not the same person, have never been in the same room. Occasionally, you can enrage Muta by attacking Kaiji Muto, but, like, it's not... They lead totally separate kayfabe lives, okay? So showing clips of Muto and talking about Muta is bullshit. Thank you, I got that off my chest.
Chono knocks Muta down with a couple shoulder blocks. Muta bails out to the floor. Ventura points out that Muta has already wrestled tonight, so Chono is fresher. Chono gets Muta on the mat, works on his arm. He switches over to work the knee. Chono goes to the top. Muta cuts him off. Muta hits a superplex, which wakes the crowd up after a slow first couple minutes. These Chono WCW matches were just dreadfully boring.
Honestly, his New Japan matches around this time are kind of the same way. He's not a man who has a particularly evocative in-ring style, and he never does. He just makes up with it with his character work later on. But that doesn't work here because nobody knows who he is. Yeah, you can't do anything because he can't speak English and cut promos or anything. So he's just as is. He's just a plain babyface dude.
I mean, he works the heel in this match because the crowd loves Muta.
Yeah, he does.
I mean, we talk about this every time we do a show Muta's on. The crowd loves Muta. He is the king.
It's like Sting and Muta are on such a gigantically different level in terms of star power from everyone else on this show. Yeah. It's just so obvious. Which is why every time New Japan gets a hold of either one of them, they put them in the ring together because they rightfully understand that that's the match people want to see.
Muta applies the Muta lock. Chono gets the ropes. Muta hits a big kick and Chono bails to the floor. Muta breaks out the handspring elbow, then a backbreaker. Muta goes to the top. He goes for the moonsault, but Chono rolls out of the way. Muta lands on his feet. I cringe every time I see that.
Yep. This is why the man gets a total knee reconstruction by the end of the 90s.
Chono and Muta exchange blows. Chono hits a Saito suplex. He goes for another, but Muta floats over into a pin for a very close 2 count. Muta goes for a drop kick. Chono catches the ropes and Muta hits the mat. Chono locks in the STF and Muta gives it up. A pretty good match, but just a lot of mat work that really didn't click with the crowd.
Agreed. It's not like this would have been a more successful match had it been staged in front of New Japan audiences. Like, this just wasn't a particularly exciting match. Muta very famously has always had the philosophy that he only really tries when the lights are on bright and it's in front of the most people. He wants the thing that he does that you remember to be the one where he was trying. And if it's a house show or a small show or an undercard match, he ain't putting in that effort.
And then Rick Rude comes out to do a promo complaining about being pulled from his match due to his injury. He complains that he's going to be stripped of the U.S. title if he can't defend it soon. He will be stripped, which will end a near-record 14-month reign with the title.
That's a shame.
Yeah. I was thinking this was the injury that ended his career, but he wrestled for another couple years after this. It's the back injury in Japan in 94 that ends it for him.
Yes, it is. Though he's already he begins to deteriorate very quickly after this.
He's wearing down at this point.
Yep.
Next up, we've got the WCW World Heavyweight Championship match. Ron Simmons against Steve Williams. Great opportunity for JR to talk about their football backgrounds.
That's all that happens in this match. It's just
lots
football.
They did play against each other. Williams was an offensive lineman at Oklahoma. Simmons was a nose tackle at Florida State. Yeah, Williams was an All-American. Simmons was an All-American. Simmons nearly won the Heisman Trophy. 2 studs.
I mean, they are 2 studs, but the degree to which Simmons is a bigger stud cannot be overstated.
Yeah.
Simmons, one of the best defensive players in the history of organized football.
Jesse makes a very weird mention of George Bush pardoning former Defense Secretary Casper Weinberger.
What the? I know this hasn't.
I don't know how he got there.
This didn't age well in the moment. What the fuck is he talking about?
He makes a hilarious political reference later that we'll get to.
Like, Jesse is already well into his, I'm going to talk about politics whenever I want because fuck it, I'm Jesse. But man, this was out of left field.
It's also, I'll get into this in a second. We'll get to this later.
Yeah.
They go down into 3-point stances. The crowd does pop for that.
Oh,
They
yeah.
do it. They do it again. Simmons leapfrogs and hits a clothesline, and Simmons does some mat work for the next couple minutes. Simmons comes off the top with a diving shoulder block, but Williams sidesteps it. Williams works on Simmons' knee. Simmons fights back. Williams cuts him off with a backbreaker and goes back to the leg. Williams hits a chop block. Simmons makes a comeback. He hits the spine buster, couple chop blocks. They then fight out to the floor, and they both get counted out.
Boo.
Oh, somehow it gets worse.
Yep.
Simmons runs Williams into the ring post. He gets in the ring, and the crowd boos him.
Not doing well. Not great.
Williams then gets in the ring. He attacks Simmons. He jumps off the top rope onto Simmons, and then referees separate them. They then announce that Williams is disqualified for doing that move off the top rope after the match ended. Jesse is furious about this, and it feels legitimate.
Like, I feel like nobody's smarting Jesse up to the new Bill Watts rules, and this is the first time he's hearing of it because he's so mad. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's not a thing. You can't do that.
Always hated the idea of somebody getting disqualified for something they did after the match.
Like, the idea of disqualifying anybody when you don't absolutely have to, especially on pay-per-view should be disqualification free. Like, it lets the air out of anything.
If you don't have a finish, don't book the match.
Yeah.
Now, in their defense, here, this was not supposed to be the match. It was supposed to be Simmons versus Rude.
Then why can't Simmons just beat Williams?
Yeah. I don't know
That's
why
the thing.
Substitute.
If you don't have the match that you originally had,
and
put him over.
Williams is leaving anyway.
Yeah.
Like, job him out.
Unless he just wouldn't agree to be jobbed out, in which case, put somebody else in there.
Big tough Bill Watts couldn't handle that.
Yeah, exactly. It pisses me off. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Next up, we've got a match for both the WCW and NWA World Tag Titles as Ricky Steamboat and Shane Douglas defend against Barry Windham and Brian Pillman. The NWA never had tag belts until 1992, and then they partnered with WCW to hold a tournament to crown them. That was won by the Miracle Violence connection of Terry Gordy and Steve Williams, which is an awesome tag team, and we've got to do one of those shows where they wrestle the Steiner brothers.
Hell yeah, this thing's kicked ass.
Gordy and Williams were also the WCW tag champions. Gordy, of course, leaves the promotion because he doesn't want to work for New Japan, and Williams will be on his way out after this. So Wyndham and Rhodes beat Williams and Gordy for the belts. Steamboat and Douglas beat them for the belts at the last Clash of Champions. And then I think Wyndham turned on Rhodes, and now he's joined up with Pillman as a heel tag team.
I suppose that's interesting. It feels weird for Pillman to be a heel here because he's not any different than he was as a babyface.
Yeah. For some reason, Jesse says that with his haircut, Shane Douglas looks like he's a big Rush Limbaugh fan. He said this before is the thing. I have this memory from like Halloween Havoc of him being like, with that haircut, Shane Douglas looks like a right-wing Republican, JR.
He did say that. I remember him mentioning it on one of our old podcasts.
What is he doing? What is he talking about?
I think he just means that wrestlers with short hair look like racist. I don't understand the point. No, the more I think about it, I think he's kind of right.
JR says that he is also a Rush Limbaugh fan. It's funny to me how the shock jock of the time is tweaking the right, whereas it feels like the shock jock of today would be tweaking the left.
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting how that's evolved over the decades.
Oh, yes.
Including Jesse himself. I haven't kept up with him lately, but I feel like his politics have become much more of the right in recent years.
Look, the politics of virtually everyone on the planet Earth have very intensely radicalized in one direction or another lately. Yeah. That's just is what it is.
Douglas and Pillman run through some takedowns. Steamboat and Wyndham tag in. Steamboat hits a suplex and then tags out to Douglas. Steamboat appears to throw Wyndham over the top rope. It's not a disqualification, even though I know that rule exists at this point.
Yep.
Problem with that rule is guys just forget about it and the referee has to ignore it.
Because throwing wrestlers over the ropes to get time is how you get time. It's how it's always been done.
He goes outside and slams Wyndham on the floor. JR points out that they play hockey in the Omni, so they've got boards over the ice. It's not concrete, but it can't be pleasant to land on.
That's a good observation. I like that. One of the few times for him bringing up sports is for the better.
Steamboat slams Wyndham on the ramp, then he hits a swinging neck breaker. Wyndham manages to tag out to Pillman. Douglas hits a drop kick that sends Pillman over the top rope and into the railing. In a hilarious moment, like Wyndham basically does CPR on Pillman to revive him.
Yep, that was pretty good.
Douglas goes to the top rope. Pillman hits him with a drop kick. Douglas takes a horrific flat back bump all the way down to the floor here.
He should not have taken this bump.
This is horrible. What is he thinking?
This is despicable. And
this wouldn't be a good idea onto the mats. This is a horrible idea onto the boards with ice underneath them.
This is some Mick Foley shit. Why are you doing Mick Foley spots right now?
Wyndham throws Douglas. Wyndham follows up with a big clothesline, and he throws Douglas through the ropes into the railing. Steamboat grabs a chair and hits Wyndham with it. The referee doesn't see it. Jesse is apoplectic. This was great.
This is what Jesse can offer.
Yes.
Jesse, everybody always does the I cheer the heels and boo the faces, ha ha ha. With Jesse, it felt real. Jesse would be angry.
I love the righteous indignation when the baby faces cheat.
I kind of feel like this is exactly what JR's character becomes, just in reverse. This exact level of indignation when the baby faces would get screwed over.
Suplex from Pillman for 2. Douglas scores with a suplex on Wyndham and manages to make the hot tag to Steamboat. Steamboat comes in with drop kicks and chops, scoop slams both men, but then Wyndham cuts him off with a huge power slam.
Yeah,
great rotation.
Loved it.
There's a back suplex by Wyndham. He tags out to Pillman. He throws Steamboat over the top while the referee's back is turned. Wyndham rams Steamboat into the ring post. Steamboat gets worked over. Wyndham goes to the top rope, but he misses his dive. Steamboat catches him with a kick and a face buster. There's tags to both Douglas and Pillman. Steamboat and Wyndham both go over the top rope. Douglas hits the belly-to-belly suplex on Pillman to get the 1-2-3. That was a hell of a tag match.
I loved every second of it. Shane Douglas is not my cup of tea per se, and nor is Barry Windham.
Though.
But Steamboat and Pillman had more than enough to cover for anything that they didn't have.
Yeah, all Wyndham just has to play the heavy here, and mostly Douglas just took the heat and then tagged out to Steamboat when the time was right.
Yeah, they knew where the money was. This is all about Steamboat versus Pillman, and we get our money's worth there.
They do a recap of the Sting-Vader feud, which includes Vader hitting Sting with a splash off the top rope and Sting hitting Vader with a 2x4. Quick question. Which would you rather have happen to you? Vader hit you with a splash or Sting hit you with a 2x4? I think I'll take the 2x4.
I would rather Sting hit me with a car than Vader, like, thumb wrestle me.
Breathe on me, yeah.
Yeah. I feel like Vader couldn't give me a high five without dislocating my shoulder on purpose.
JR says Sting's strategy is going to have to be to stretch the match out and hope Vader wears out. And then it's match time. Vader comes out first wearing a do-rag, which is hilarious.
I fucking love it. What a look this is.
Not quite as cool as like the elephant thing that would shoot steam.
Man, why isn't he using that?
I think he only used that like once. I mean, thing must have been horrible to take through the airports.
But it's the coolest shit in the world.
Is. I mean, he doesn't have to do it for every house show, but like for pay-per-view, he should really have that thing.
For Starrcade? Come on, man. Just airmail that shit to the arena.
I would make a giant one of those and have it like come down from the ceiling and have him come out of it.
Oh.
Get one with wheels and have him drive it into the arena.
Just like a monster truck with that shit on top.
Vader drops Sting with a body avalanche. Follows up with a military press that drops Sting across the top rope like a hot shot. Sting comes back with a rolling kick, another kick, and then a German suplex on Vader.
This is so good.
Is it too early in the match to do that? Should he build to it instead?
It's also too early in Vader's run to do this. Like,
period. Yeah.
If you're building to something in the future, like if you think that Vader's the guy, he should just kill Sting in 30 seconds.
They already cut Vader's nuts off is the thing.
Yeah, like, that's the thing, is that you've already ruined it. Like that sucks.
In our hypothetical fantasy booking last week, I think we came to this should be Vader's Sting with Vader winning the belt at Starrcade here.
Yeah. He should have destroyed everyone on the entire roster up to this point. Yeah. And to that point, I think that like the Battlebowl should be first shot at the champion here. Sting's the champ. Vader wins the Battlebowl, crushes Sting.
Yeah. Just feed him everybody. Feed him Ricky Steamboat. Feed him Dustin Rhodes. Feed him every babyface on the roster. And then he beats Sting too. And then, yeah, you can work it a year for Sting to get his rematch, and he has to go through the Battlebowl the next year to beat Vader.
Yeah, you don't even see Sting for like 3 months because he's devastated by this.
Yeah.
And then he's just got to work his way back to the top.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Harley's got a crew of thugs that he has to work through first. He has to beat all these heels both to get to Vader and get his confidence back.
Absolutely.
And maybe what if his old rival Ric Flair returns and trains him?
That's the moment. That's when we get like our Rocky, like that's when we get Rocky 3, where like Apollo comes out in the shadows. Like we just see Sting in the gym, and then fucking Ric Flair walks around the corner. Yeah. You ain't ready to beat him, but you could be.
And you can spend months teasing that Flair's going to turn on him.
And then of course he does. Like that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, he just needed to get the belt off Vader before he could turn on him.
Yeah, so Sting wins the belt Vader at Starrcade, and Flair turns on him the next day, and boom, there you go.
Clotheslines from Sting. They both go over the top rope. Sting follows up with a cross body from the top rope all the way down to the floor. They go back in the ring. Vader misses a corner avalanche. Sting goes for a Stinger splash, but Vader gets his foot up. Sting comes back with a DDT. Sting hits the superplex. He superplexed Vader, and that's not the finish.
Nope.
This match is great, but man, this is a lot he throws at Vader here.
If this had been
the match.
Yeah, if this had been the comeback match, like if this is Vader's already crushed him, this is him coming back, and he's just got nothing but offense. Like he's just beating his ass, like throwing everything out, superplex, all this stuff that he's learned that he's never tried before, and then he wins it like he does. This big ass splash off the top with everything and all the stank in the world on it. That's awesome. This is just a random match. Like you're running through all your shit here.
Sting applies the Scorpion Deathlock. Vader gets to the ropes. They go out to the floor. Sting goes for a Stinger splash, but he misses and hits the railing. Vader hits a body avalanche and a clothesline, back suplex and a splash from Vader. JR has this thing, he talks about how like Vader hit him so hard he like bounced himself off Sting and couldn't cover him.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what Vader would do. Is like he wants to hurt you so bad. He's not worrying about positioning.
Chin lock from Vader, even that has stank on it when Vader does it.
I wouldn't, especially since, as we've learned from Mick Foley, Vader did not wash his gear, did not wash himself. If you're in a chin lock, you're in an armpit lock is what you're in.
God, that sounds disgusting. Sting manages to get Vader down for a backslide, but Vader gets out. Sting tries for a sunset flip. Vader goes to sit down. Sting moves. Vader gets some punches. JR speculates that Sting is trying to let Vader punch himself out. Jesse is skeptical at this point. Vader sets up for a superplex. Sting gets some body shots, a thumb to the eye, and a big right hand. Down goes Vader. Sting collapses. They're both down. They get back to their feet. Vader throws some more punches. Jesse points out they don't have as much pop as they did before. The monster has begun to tire.
And that's the story. Like, that should be the story of any great big Vader match. It's like,
this is brilliantly worked.
Yes.
This is such a smart match.
That's the stunning thing. Why is this not the main event of this show?
God.
The amount of thought and care that go into this match, and like that go into Sting perfectly working Vader against his weaknesses. That Vader goes into selling being exhausted. This is like one of the performances of Vader's career.
And like he actually is tired. You see how hard he's breathing.
Yeah. Everything Vader does is a shoot.
Yeah. Same way you beat Brock Lesnar.
Yeah. You can't beat him if he's fresh. Of course not. You got no chance.
Helps that Lesnar turns a just like horrifying shade of purple when he wrestles more than about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Lesnar is a genuinely amazing seller, and like don't let yourself ever be convinced of anything else. Like he's a great professional wrestler, but the fact that when he's selling he turns purple, it makes it so much better because it's like whenever you punch a video game boss and they turn a different color.
Yeah, there are times watching him in the ring, I'm like, oh God, is he having a heart attack?
It's just he's got some sort of thing where like his skin gets caught on fire.
I think it's just real. Like, as everybody always says, the only way to train to wrestle is to wrestle, and he doesn't do it very often.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, his cardio is just not, like, up to everybody else's, and it gets tiring throwing guys around with all those suplexes.
Which is hilarious, because exhausted Brock Lesnar is still eminently capable of delivering a 15-minute amazing match.
Sting with right hands, down goes the Beast. Sting, like, what did he do here? This was like what Sheamus calls it, the Celtic Cross. What's the air raid crash? What do you call this?
It's sort of halfway between an air raid crash and like Mizawa's Emerald Flosion. Like this is interesting. I've never seen anything like this.
I don't know what he was trying to do here.
I mean, I think he's just trying to do like an air raid crash kind of, or like a Samoan drop maybe, and he just can't get him. Like it's Vader. So he just kind of gets him over his shoulder. He's like, well, I guess I'm dropping him. Fuck.
Sting with a splash from the top rope. Only gets 2. Crowd is living and dying on this match at this point.
This splash is amazing. God. This is like Rob Van Dam level. Throw myself into the sky. I want you to die.
Don't forget, Sting is a big man. And he got up here.
Like he's like a legit jumps like 12 feet in the air. And it's fucking just the visual from the floor. And also, we haven't really mentioned, but the camera angles they're getting inside the ring on this show are something I've never seen on a WCW show before. So, like, they shoot this from below, and it looks like he's jumping into your living room.
God, I love when they shoot top rope moves like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sting gets distracted by Harley Race. Vader punches him to regain control. Vader goes up to the second rope. He hits a splash. And again, he kind of bounces off him. And he's tired, so it takes him too long to make the cover, so he can only get 2.
And now he's starting to get frustrated.
Yeah. So he makes a big mistake. He goes all the way to the top rope. He comes off. Sting catches him out of the air with a power slam and gets the 1, 2, 3. What an amazing match.
Again, I hate to just beat this dead horse, but to be very clear, if this had been the culmination of a year-long storyline finishing at Starrcade where Sting finally beats Vader, this would be remembered as one of the best main events in wrestling history.
And you even could have done it. You know, Vader could have gotten the belt from him in the summer like he did, and you come back with a return match at Starrcade. Like, I think you could have pulled that off. That's plenty of time.
It's not that this is like the best match of all time. It's a very, very, very good match. But if you just put that level of meaning behind it, everything in this match carries so much more weight. Because that's what this match is constructed as, if it's Sting's got to figure out how to beat the Beast, and he's finally done it. He's finally cracked the code that no one else could. Except that doesn't mean anything because he kind of already had, or Simmons did, and
yeah, Simmons slayed the Beast.
It sucks. Like, it's not as meaningful as it could have been, and this really feels like Vader's whole career was made for that match with Sting, and we never really get it. Yeah.
They'll have a return match at Super Brawl. I believe that is the White Castle of Fear strap match.
Goody. Why have we've nenever talked about those we never got a chance to talk about those vignettes.
We have so much more WCW to cover. We really haven't even scratched the surface of the weirdness of this company yet.
We could just start in January of 1990 and just go until the fucking thing is dead. And we could just be our whole podcast. I don't want that. Let me make that clear. I can't do that.
Before I get any ideas.
Holy shit, Steve. You can't do that to me.
Wake up tomorrow morning to an email where I've laid out the schedule for the next 3 years, and it's all WCW shows.
Why is it called the Tony Schiavone cast? That's not the name I remember agreeing to.
Oh, we go to Schiavone and Zbyszko. They talk about the importance of the Battlebowl ring. They compare it to winning the Super Bowl. And then we throw to Schiavone interviewing Green Bay Packer legend Paul Hornung, who talks about the importance of championship rings. They're really trying to get this over. I admire their dedication.
I do also admire their dedication. And also, as a diehard Bears fan, fuck Paul Hornung.
All right, it's Battlebowl time. This is the match the world has come to see.
Well, some of it. Not a very large percentage, really.
It's only 8 guys this time. Also, it's I guess I should have mentioned at the top of the show, it's only 1 ring this year. They ditched the 2-ring concept this time. I think that's for the better.
Yeah, it is for the better, and obviously they're not spending that kind of money on this show, so.
Our participants, we've got Barry Windham, Dan Spivey, Dustin Rhodes, Great Muta, Steve Williams, Sting, Vader, and Van Hammer. Who you got?
Well, I don't know. That Van Hammer kid's looking real good. Okay,
I mean, logically speaking here, okay, Sting just beat Vader, so doesn't feel like he needs to win here.
It's stupid as fuck to put Sting and Vader in this match.
I can't believe they're back out there after that match. They just had that match. They've had like 5 minutes to rest.
But if you're gonna do it, Vader should win this match and get his heat back, right?
That's the immediate thought. I mean, the other thing I would think is maybe give it to Dustin just to give the young guy the big push, but yeah. I don't think he's there yet.
There's 4 ways you can go with this entire night, right? Vader beats Sting, which he probably should have, and then Sting wins the Battlebowl to get his Stingness back, because Sting's got a pose. Or Sting beats Vader, and then Vader gets his heat back. Or you just don't put him in the fucking Battlebowl at all, because why? And then you have a young guy win, like Dustin Rhodes. Dustin is a perfectly logical choice. Steve Austin could win it, something like that. Pillman, I don't know. Or you can have the guy who actually wins win, which is a whole different thing.
Vader attacks Sting during Sting's entrance. They brawl on the ramp for a little bit. We get all 8 guys in the ring. No eliminations for the first 5 minutes, just kind of standard battle royal stuff where guys are kind of leaning on each other. Williams manages to eliminate Van Hammer. Rhodes hits Wyndham with a bulldog out on the ramp. Williams hits a back suplex on Vader. Sting clotheslines Spivey over the top rope onto the ramp. They rule that's an elimination. They count the ramp as part of the floor. It would actually be kind of fascinating if the ramp was like a safe haven.
That would be interesting because where does the ramp end? Like if you run into the backstage area, is that still the ramp? Or is that the floor? Maybe if you can escape, you just stay in the battle royal forever.
Well, I mean, you can, because you can go out under the bottom rope or through the middle rope, and you're not eliminated.
I always wonder why somebody didn't do that in like the Royal Rumble. Is like go into the bottom rope and then just like leave the arena and come back the next day and be like, I won a #1 contendership match. God damn it, I never got eliminated.
Yeah, I mean that is a bit of a flaw in the Royal. I've always thought like there should be some kind of count out rule in the Royal Rumble that like if you're outside the ring for more than a minute, you're eliminated.
Nope, sorry, I'm in the upper deck. Come get me.
Yeah, I mean it's happened a few times. Vince did commentary in the one with Austin. Curtis Axel got jumped during his entrance and never eliminated.
Yes. Axelmania, we all remember.
Yeah. Sting and Vader both tumble over the top after a crossbody from Sting, so they're both eliminated. So we're down to our final 4. It's Muta, Rhodes, Williams, and Wyndham. Wyndham struggles with Rhodes on the ropes. Wyndham tries to dump them both, but he only succeeds in eliminating himself and Rhodes. Wyndham hits Muta with a superplex. Muta hits a drop kick. That sends Wyndham over the top of the floor. Big pop for Muta winning.
Oh, the crowd goes nuts. That's who they wanted to win. If it's not going to be Sting, we want Muta.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is here is like, I would imagine there's some New Japan influence here where they want their guy to win.
This might be trying to resolve a political issue with New Japan.
I mean, especially if they're kind of pissed off because of the whole you pushing people that they don't necessarily want being pushed or even associating with those people. Like this is probably a smart play.
Making Liger wrestle Steve Williams in that match.
But you don't need to have this be the main event. Like you could still put Sting and Vader in the main event.
Yeah.
Especially, like, Muta doesn't need this. Muta's a gigantic star. He's going to go home. He's about to main event in front of 53,000 people. This means nothing. Like, the people in Japan aren't seeing this show. Yeah. It's irrelevant.
Yeah, the show is not available in Japan.
Japan doesn't even have pay-per-view. They never really get pay-per-view. It's not a thing there.
Yeah.
So, like, what is this for? What are you gaining from this?
No, it's very strange. I mean, I love Muta. He's awesome. He's never going to work in WCW full time. It is never going to happen.
Oh God, no! They're never going to let him go now. He's literally like they're grooming him to be John Cena. Like they're not going to let him go work for another company 6 months out of the year. I think they just didn't understand that when he was here before it was on Excursion. Maybe they thought they were going to get him for like a 2-year stretch again.
Yeah, they thought they were going to have another of those. Not how it works. Again, ignorance of Japanese wrestling.
Yeah, they just didn't get it. And there's not another Muta coming down the pipeline from the New Japan Dojo. That was a miracle, once in a lifetime. It doesn't happen that way.
When is the next time there will be a big Japanese wrestling star?
They ride this group, which
includes a long time,
which includes Sasuke, until the next Three Musketeers comes along, which is Tanahashi, Nakamura, and Shibata in 2000. Yeah. So,
long time.
It is a long time.
Yeah. Whew. So yeah, that is a wrap for Starrcade. 1992. I don't know how to evaluate this show. It had two really great matches. The Battlebowl didn't do anything for me, and that was most of the show.
I do want to praise that, like, the show just seemed like it was put together more professionally. Like, it seemed like somebody in the back understood, like, hey, we should have these people wrestle this match, or these people actually be in the Battle Bowl. That would be an interesting team. People might be interested in that. Oh, we should put this segment goes like this. Just the first segment where they like throw to all the different announcers, like, hey, it's me, Jim Ross, and Jesse Ventura. Now I'm going to throw over to Eric Bischoff in our studio, and now we're going to go over to Tony Schiavone, and now we're going to go over here. Like, is more professionally done. I don't feel like they could have pulled that off in 1991. So I at least want to give them credit that, like, somebody behind the scenes knows what they're doing now. Unfortunately, what it is that they are doing is dumb as shit.
Yeah, whether it's Watts or Ole Anderson, somebody seems to be reining in Dusty a little bit and, making things make more sense.
And for whatever reason, I just feel like the production value, like the people making the show, like the cameramen and like the producers, and like they're doing a better job. I don't know if that's changed, but like it's come a long way in a year.
Man, a long and twisted path for WCW in this era, and things are going to get even stranger next week as we cover Starrcade 1993, which is going to be the first Starrcade of the Eric Bischoff era. Ric Flair will have returned, and he's on top against Vader for the WCW title. If you thought we loved that Sting Vader match, just wait till we talk about this Vader Flair match next week.
In truth, the Vader Flair match is kind of what the Sting Vader match should have been.
It's one of the, it's crazy to say like the highlight of Ric Flair's career given the career he had, but it really is one of the best performances of his career. It's kind of the last hurrah for him. If you think about it, even though he wrestled another 15 years after that, I don't think he had a better moment after that.
Certainly not where he was the focus of that moment.
Yeah.
And also, we're going to have a discussion, too, because it might very well be that this is, other than a Flair for the Gold, is this the only great Starrcade main event? I will have to talk about it.
It's a short list.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all that and more next time on the Lawcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again next time.